Hey everyone, welcome back to All About the Geek, and today we're going to be doing something that I personally love doing and I get to do entirely too little of, and that is assemble a PC. Now, if you're not in the PC space, you may not be aware of this, but graphics cards are almost impossible to come by. So when my buddy Matt, who runs LaserQuill, reached out to me and said, hey, I need a new computer for running my laser, the first thing I had to ask was, do you need a graphics card for that? And he said, no, all of his rendering happens on another machine that's got all the juice it needs. This machine simply needs to take those files that are already pre-rasterized and feed them into the laser. So it's a fairly simple build. And realistically, it's going to be really quick, but I've never shot a real PC build video. When I built my current main computer, which you can kind of see just behind me here, I did shoot a video well before I even thought about YouTubing. I dumped it up on YouTube with a speed ramp on it, so you know the entire build took like 2 minutes, and I had Thunderstruck playing in the background, so of course YouTube forced that video to be private, and it had a watermark across it because I was using some free software, and it was just cool to share with some friends. But now I want to try to do like proper tech YouTuber style video, not only because I think it'd be cool to do for this particular instance, but I also have a personal build that I'm hoping to do probably next month once the pieces get here. And that one's going to be a bit fancier. I'm going to be reusing the graphics card from that machine because graphics cards, as I said, are almost impossible to come by, but it's going to be fun. In the meantime, what are we looking at for parts here? For Matt's build, we're going to go Intel because, as I said, we need something that doesn't need a graphics card. So as much as I have become a bit of an AMD fanboy for the price to performance, realistically, the Intel CPU we're going to be using here, which is the i5 11400. It's a 2.6 base clock CPU that boosts up to 4.4 gigahertz with 6 cores and 12 threads. So the funny thing is that this i5, yes, 3 generations newer than my machine, is almost as fast as my machine is. I don't know what the IPC is. The gigahertz and number of cores is all a form of measurement, but it's not the be-all end-all form of measurement. Anyway, we're pairing that with this Z590 motherboard from Gigabyte. Now, the CPU is not unlocked for overclocking, which is fair enough, but I needed to go with this motherboard largely because it was the only one available. Part selection sometimes is not great here in Canada, and in order to make it easy for him to buy all the parts he needed in one stop, we needed to go with a Z590 rather than one of the lower end B or H series motherboards, which would have been fine for this processor. We went Gigabyte just because it was the best price for a brand that I trusted. Normally I would go Asus, but I'm quite happy to use a Gigabyte or MSI motherboard in any of the builds I'm doing unless I have a specific theme going on. To cool the CPU, because even though it has a stock cooler, Intel stock coolers are garbage, we're going with the ubiquitous Hyper 212 Black Edition with the Silencio fans. I've used this cooler before. Realistically, if you're not doing anything high power or doing a lot of overclocking, this cooler is basically all you need. It's great, and it's got a great price point of about 40 to 50 bucks. I was able to get one for my girlfriend's build for $35 on sale. So if you're not in a rush for it, this is a great one to keep an eye out for your build. For RAM, we're going with Corsair LPX Vengeance, 16 gigabytes at DDR, or 16 gigabytes at 3200 megahertz, and I believe this is CL, I don't know if the timings are on here. Where are the timings? There we go. This is C16, so it's some really fast, tight timing RAM. And again, this is actually not too bad. If you live in Canada, one of the lovely things is we don't have all the tariffs that you do in the States. So while we have part selection issues, the prices are actually not bad. I can't remember what the price on this was, but it was very good for what it was. Similarly, for the hard drive, we could have gone with a SATA SSD, but the WD Black 500 gigabyte happened to be on sale at Memory Express when we assembled this build. So this was the same price as buying a SATA SSD, but with less wires and cables for me to manage when I assemble it. So that just seemed like a good way to go. And powering this is the good old Corsair RM650X. So it's a 650 watt power supply. It's more than enough juice for this, so it will be nice and quiet. This rig will actually be, I expect, to be fairly silent. If I had noise or sound measuring equipment of any real caliber, I would 100% be doing a noise test to see just how quiet I can make this build. It's fully modular, so there's only going to be 2 cables run off of this that we need. We're going to need the ATX motherboard cable, and we'll need the supplementary CPU power. And the other nice thing is these are individual cables, at least where they terminate. I think they might be bundled prior to that, but they're individually sleeved. They're not a ribbon. And more importantly, they're all black. So we'll get some reasonable aesthetic. I don't actually know what color the motherboard is. I expect it's going to be some pretty standard, probably a black PCB. That's pretty standard. I haven't opened this up to take a look. So that's it for what we're doing here. Let's jump into some build footage. So I've installed the modular cables on here, and all we need is the 24 pin. And this motherboard, because it is a Z590, it does have more substantial power requirements than we really need for this CPU. So it requires an 8-pin plus a 4-pin. So I cannibalized a cable from another Corsair power supply. If you are in a similar situation, just a heads up, do not, under any circumstances, mix and match cables from different power supply vendors. So my other one is also an RM series power supply, so they are 100% compatible across these. It's less critical on the CPU, but it is definitely on the motherboard. The main board cables are different, and you can do some serious damage. All right, the build is done, and well, a couple of things came up. So the power, I ran out of juice on my camera, ran out of juice on one of my lights, and that's why there's been kind of less footage than I would have liked. The other thing that came up is I noticed that the back panel, let me just bring it over here. You may not really see that, but that's a display port out, which isn't really a huge deal. Except that I don't have a spare display DisplayPort capable device. So I've got a DisplayPort to HDMI cable on the way, so setting up Windows and stuff will have to wait till later in the week. It did power on, which is awesome, and I've already shot a bunch of B-roll, which you'll see at the end of the video. It's not super sexy, there's no RGB, no graphics card, a couple spinning fans, and just some cool, clean PC. Let's just take a quick look at it here. So there she is. It's, you know, pretty basic machine, which is what we were aiming to do. Nothing too terrible fancy, but will definitely get the job done. And more importantly, even without adjusting the fan curves, this thing is darn near silent, which is what I kind of expected. So we're going to close out the video with some sweet B-roll. And until next time, I just want to remind you all to stay safe, have fun in the sun, wear some sunscreen, work your wonks, and above all else, remember to keep it geeky.